So now we move on to the TE signals, beginning with TE1, which is plateau emphasis. This is distinguished from FE1, which is on-beat emphasis. And the difference is in the swell of FE versus the direct movement to full velocity of TE. Now this is kind of hard for me to convey, but I'm going to try. So this is what the velocity of TE looks like. You saw that? It's like it just goes right into full velocity. The head, the hands, they just go, and even if the velocity is not very fast, it goes to its max velocity quite immediately. So even if it's like this, then there's no swell. It's all just an ongoing sort of thing. So even this is plateau emphasis. It's all kind of plateaued at the same degree. It's not transitioning like FE, like this, where there's ups and downs. There's with TE, it's kind of just it's at the same velocity of expression. Now what's tricky is when you have people that are like news anchors, and one of the things that they've learned to do is to try to coat their expression more to imitate some of FE's way of doing things. So you will see some, especially women TE leads, use some learned level of emotional swelling in their impacts, but it'll still have the imprint of like their head, like when their head rattles, it'll still be like this, and when they talk, it'll still be like this, and overall, it's just, you can tell that the velocity goes into full swing really quickly, and it's really snappy, and it's like that. That's the pattern of TE, which is a plateau emphasis. Now TE2 is taut square cheeks, and this goes kind of hand in hand with the look of FI on the face, but with TE, what you see a little bit more, although it varies from face structures, but with TE usually the emotive expression is contained a little more towards this bottom of the face. With FI, there's a breaking through the cheeks. And what that means is with FI, the tension is the resting tension and the snarling goes up so high that it breaks this area and it goes into the eyes. So when they're doing their snarling, laughing, ha 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 ha, it goes ha ha way into the eyes, right? With TE, there's kind of a buffer that keeps it around this area, and so it's like where it's like it's kind of it gets pudgy here, but the smile doesn't emote all the way up into the eyes as much. Again, like TI, this is just talking about baselines. Different faces will go a different way, so it's better to just identify the function, and when it comes to hierarchy, you want to focus on the energetics. So this is not meant to be a replacement for hierarchy, but in general, TE's emotive expression will be a little bit more contained around the mouth area, and what this causes is a lot of tension. So you have this bulging cheeks that are also going like this, and then you have these two, like I said, there's this H pattern. These two are kind of pulling down, and what this does is it creates this square effect where there's like 2 points of focal tension here and then 2 points of focal tension here. Often this will actually change the structure of the jaw itself to where the jaw, you'll actually kind of see this extra bump around this jaw area coming from like this pulling of the muscle here. So, and it'll change the contour of the shape like this a little bit, and like this a little bit. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see in the signal page what this looks like. So I actually have this page up. TE3 is horizontally split cheeks. Again, since I don't have the facial anatomy for it, I can't do this signal, but I have this one up in the signal pages so you can see it in more detail. But in general, the same H pattern of tension pulling creates a kind of a divot or valley around here, splitting the cheeks together. This is different than the splitting you might see from FE. So FE can also cause, lines to form of like this. But these are not what we're talking about. So notice how this kind of creates this curtain effect, like as if you're pulling cloth up. There's that curtain effect. With TE, it's all very taut around here. And so the kind of line that appears in the center is a very stretchy line. It's a line created by the stretchiness of the up and down opposite muscular pulls. TE4 is nasal monotone voice. And this is kind of like, when TE just has this pinch in the voice and it just comes out like this, and, they don't really care. And, it all comes out kind of a little bit like a news anchor. And that's actually because news anchors are often selected as TEs because TEs seem to be quite efficient at that kind of position. So you want to look at samples like Chris Wallace or Scott Walker or Ted Cruz. Any of those guys can be used as reference points for the kind of voice the TE has. Now TE5 is snippy head shakes. So again, JE in general has head shakes and head nods, and I've described the FE ones previously. For TE, it carries a plateau emphasis. So head nods will usually be this, and as they're talking, they're just kind of, again, going into full velocity really quickly. And you can see this a lot in people like Camellia Paglia and oh yeah, and especially in people like Ben Shapiro. His head is constantly shaking, just like jittering like mad. Just that's how TE is when it's in full swing. Now TE6 is snippy head nods, and that would be the up and down of the head. So it's more like this with a little bit of a snap to it, just like the head shakes, except it's going up and down, and so there's a little bit of like that going on. And again, it's still snappy, and it still has this pinched voice usually when it comes together as a unit in how a person expresses themselves. Now, both of those signals that I just did are showing kind of a high TE expression. It looks a little different when TE is lower down, but usually the common attributes are the snippiness and the snappiness and the jitteriness. So even if you're a PE lead with TE, so you're going to be kind of swaying and so forth, but then you're going to give little snaps here and there as you gesticulate. And TE7 is snippy shoulder shrugs, and I've done some of this with the previous signals too, where as they're doing this with their head, they're usually also their shoulders are also collaborating in this shrugging motion, and that's part of the dismissiveness. The dismissiveness of TE is a combination of snippy shoulder shrugs, snippy head shakes, and it's a little bit mechanical. It's a little bit sharp. It's a little sharp in how it comes across, and it's like there's a snap to it. So like shoulder shrugs are just like, again, I need to differentiate this from shoulder shrugging in general because it's more generally a JE signal. So here's an example. FE, let's say if they're parenting their kids and say, with my kids, I just let them do what they want to do and learn their lessons in whatever way they need to learn them. That's more or less okay. That's FE. But with TE, the snippiness of the shoulder shrugs is constant, and it's much more snappy, but it doesn't have to be as big. So with FE, there's still that swell in the shoulder shrugs. With TE, it can even be like really, really small, but really, really constant, like just shaking. Like sometimes they're just talking like this, and it's just this micro shaking, this micro rattling. That'll tell you that it's TE. TE8 is overbearing yang, and I absolutely cannot do this signal. I just don't have the energy for it. But basically, this is an extreme form of TE unsealing. So strong, usually higher up, unsealy TE on like a full steamroller crusade. And you can see this in people like Bill O'Reilly, which is used as a prime example of this. And this is the sister signal to uh, FE's directive pushing. TE9 is blunt humor. Now this is more of a contextual slash psychological signal. You'll notice it in the way that TE is filterless in what it makes fun of, but it also has this knee-jerk, most objective, blundering comedy. So often the comedy revolves around the blunders in the objective world that someone uh, might face, and it could be slapstick. So it can be slapstick humor, and there's a kind of refreshing lack of care for any sort of taboos that might be crossed by that. So you see this in people like Joy Behar, you see it in Bill Maher, and you see it in even Richard Dawkins. This kind of sarcastic, blunt, dismissive, but kind of refreshingly frank humor. And lastly, TE10 is avalanching articulation. I did some of this in this video already, where they just kind of go on and on. So what happens is TE is an articulation function, but because it has a plateau emphasis, then there's no definitive valleys to their articulation, and they can go on and they can go on. Again, I have to bring in Ben Shapiro here. He just talks like 100 miles per hour, and yeah, actually a TE, avalanching articulation, will tend to talk at 100 miles per hour. Very prolific in what they create or how much they create as far as linguistic content. So as a signal, what you want to look for here is like this lack of breaks for breath almost when you're talking, as they just kind of go from one topic to the next, and they don't really have a time to breathe. They just go on, and then like when they're finishing one sentence, the other one's already starting, and then the other one starts next, and it doesn't seem like they're giving you a space to go in, interject. They just kind of keep going, and it just kind of keeps, rolling across. That's kind of what the signal appears like in practice.